All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope that you're enjoying meeting and hearing the new faces and the new energy that is hopefully going to come with this new sitting of Parliament. And of course, we're going to see all of it happen tonight. And that red carpet, tune in. I know that we're going to be bringing you all of that coverage live, and we'll be here the entire day as SABC News. But I think on SABC 2, I stand to be corrected, but I think our broadcast should start at about 6 o'clock, and that'll give you the red carpet. Then, of course, the main address, which will take place at 7 o'clock by our president. But for more, keep tuned to SABC News, and we'll show you all of the previews and analysis and everything you need to know, as usual, about this particular SONA. But we've spoke to the Chief Whip of the ANC. It's now time to speak to the DA, and I've got John Steenhuisen with me, and it's good to see you once again. I hate to say an older face, because it's not that old. It's a young face, but one that's been in these positions before. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Outlasted 3 ANC Chief Whips. Hope to outlast a few more.
I know. So your new one, as we saw, we spoke to her right now. She's full of energy. She's robust. Do you think you can keep up with her?
Yeah, of course. I think it's going to be interesting. Obviously, a change dynamic from Jackson and Mthembu, who we very sadly lost to the executive. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to a robust and exciting 6th Parliament that reasserts itself as the arena of executive accountability, particularly given the comments this week by Deputy Chief Justice Zondo about Parliament's failure to deal with state capture properly. So,
yeah. And I mean, as we were speaking to Pammy right now, the Chief Whip, I mean, she spoke a good game, but obviously it's a matter of seeing whether or not this is actually going to be put into action. Accountability, no longer thinking you're above the law, and actually finally getting some justice brought in. Like I say, we still need to see that happen, though.
Of course, and Parliament's got to stop being a lapdog and stop being a watchdog as it comes to the executive. Far too many ministers in the 5th Parliament didn't come to answer questions, failed to answer written questions, and even when they were on the ropes in the House, got bailed out by the Speaker and presiding officers. That has to come to an end. This needs to be a robust arena of executive accountability where the people are sitting here are representing the interests of the people that have sent them here, not the party bosses at the party headquarters. And that's going to be very, very important if we're going to re-establish this Parliament as an arena of executive accountability and hold the Ramaphosa administration to its promises and some of the ones that he's going to be making later this evening.
Well, and that's what I think South Africans now, of course, are waiting for. We don't necessarily just want to. There's been a lot of promises that have been made to us, but to see these promises actually being put into action is what is severely lacking. So tonight, what are you hoping to get out of the State of the Nation?
Well, I think the President's going to have to very clearly set out some markers and plans for what he intends to do. The last 2 SONAs he's given, you could argue he didn't have his own electoral mandate, but this time he's got an electoral mandate behind him, and I think he's got to set out very clearly and unambiguously what we're going to do to get South Africans back to work, what we've got to do to get the economy working. The announcement of virtuous ends this evening is not going to cut it. It has to be a concrete roadmap of reform, labour market reform, SOE reform, education system reform, safety and security reform that he's going to have to drive through. The Ramaphosa of the last 2 SONAs has given away to the Rama reality, a 3.2% contraction in GDP, more people joining the unemployment queue. If he's not going to set out clear plans this evening, as well as setting out a marker to his own benches about the direction to end this endless policy uncertainty and confusion that has characterized the ANC of the last decade, I think he's going to struggle.
Yeah. You know, we talked to, and I was reading, you were making these comments as well yesterday. I was just reading it in the media this morning, all about this unity as well. And there are so many promises, and yet you feel that within the ranks of the ANC, there's still these divisions. And how do you achieve all of these goals if you're not actually all on the same page?
And there's significant challenges for the President. Yesterday was a major blow to him. Many of those committee chairs, candidates that were nominated were ex-Zuma cabinet members, architects, enablers and implementers of state capture, now going to be sitting on the very committees that should be clearing up and cleaning out state capture. It's a very, very bad marker that's been put down by the Magashule faction here. And I think the President's going to struggle to drive a solid economic reform agenda and a reform of various services in South Africa agenda when some of those roadblocks are not going to be coming from the opposition. They're going to be coming from significant role players here in Parliament. And it should be a concern for the President. And he's going to have to stamp his authority very, very early on and very, very unambiguously because if he allows Parliament to become a roadblock to his agenda and reform and allows the Magashule faction to dominate, it's going to undercut and pull the rug out of any virtuous ends or plans or ideas that he announces this evening.
Yeah. So one of the best things the DA does is speak about the ANC. But let's talk about the DA, shall we? Because that's one topic we tend to not get too much from. And we talk about unity or disunity within the ANC. What about in the DA? I mean, there was talk at one stage after your performance in these elections that you should be finding a new leader because Mmusi Maimane just isn't cutting it.
Yeah. Well, I disagree vehemently. I think there's no better leader who personifies our message of building one South Africa for all than Mmusi Maimane. And I do find it odd that so many of these analysts are saying, well, the DA lost 5 seats, so Mmusi must go. Well, Mr. Ramaphosa lost 21 seats, and I don't see the same calls being made for him to go. The DA needs to be very clear about what we are, who we are, and what we're trying to achieve. We also need to set out very clearly for South Africa our case far better. I think that we obviously had a setback in this election. We're not pleased about it. We're introspecting, and we're going to come back having listened to what the message the voters have sent us with a renewed vigour, with a new energy to be able to show South Africans that we are the only party standing in the rational centre of South African politics, the only party fighting to build one South Africa for all in this country.
What went wrong, John? I mean, when you look at it, it was almost that you were handed votes on a golden platter. With all of these Zondo Commission taking place, all of these revelations of what the government has done, people feeling so despondent, perhaps looking for another chance, another avenue of hope. And yet, with the internal wranglings in the DA, you guys never took advantage. What went wrong?
Well, I don't think there's any party that's immune to disagreements inside, and certainly the nature of disagreements in the DA don't take the form of chair throwing and political murders and assassinations as you see in other parties. But yes, there was some internal noise, and we need to bed that down, and we've taken a very strong line now under Mmusi Maimane's leadership to crack down on that internal noise that distracts the party and voters from what our core message is. But we have to make our case better. There's no party fighting to build one South Africa for all. There's no party that's clear and unambiguous about a market-driven economy. There's no party that's got alternative solutions the way we do. We've got to make that case better. We've got to listen to the criticism that's been sent to us. We've got to focus far more on setting out our own stall rather than just reacting to what the ANC does. And we've got to set out and be that clear alternative in South Africa. And I've no doubt if we do that, we stand up unambiguously for our values, our principles, and we're consistent on those, that more and more South Africans will start to trust the DA. People who may have lost trust this election, people who've never trusted us before, but also the hundreds of thousands of young South Africans who've just given up on politics altogether. We've got to attract them back to the rational centre of South African politics and start building a new majority at that centre.
Yeah. Just one final issue that I need to bring up with you. Of course, your former colleague, your former party member, breakaway, got good there, also going to be sitting in Parliament and is now a minister. This must hurt.
Not at all. I think it is the best case scenario for the DA. Worst case, having her as the chair of SCOPA. Worst case, sitting on the parliamentary benches. Now she is going to be subject to oral questions, written questions. She's now on the pedestal of the executive. It's going to be far easier to deal with her as a member now of the executive than it would have been having to deal with her on the opposition benches. So I think there's a massive opportunity for the DA. And also bear in mind, given her election manifesto, this is now the minister who's going to have to deal with the expropriation bill in Parliament, which is going to open up all sorts of opportunities, I believe, for the DA and the opposition as it relates to unstitching what her real agenda is.
Yeah. Finally, John, as we go up to, I had to look at the time, we've got maybe a minute or so. The 6th sitting of Parliament now, the 6th Democratic Parliament, what do you think it's going to look like? Because these past few years have been very hard as South Africans to actually have to watch, because it was hard. I can only imagine what you guys went through, the fighting, the shouting, police coming in, the white shirts, whatever you want to call them, I don't even know. But the reality is that it hasn't been nice. What do you think now? Do you think that narrative will change, or do you still think we're going to be subjected to what we've always seen happening?
I hope that we're not going to be subjected to that. I just think the country is in such a deep state of crisis that we've got to make sure that Parliament works. It's got to move from being a lapdog to being a watchdog, but it also can't be a mad dog. And those scenes that we saw emanating from the House, the violence, sets a tone for the rest of the country. It's very difficult for us to criticise people who go on service delivery protests and burn things when the message being sent from Parliament that if you want to be heard, be violent and use your fists rather than your argument. And I certainly hope that's going to be a chapter that we can close. And I certainly hope that the Speaker and the presiding officers are going to take a firm line from the get-go, that we don't indulge that type of behaviour in the House. South Africa works when Parliament works. A working, effective Parliament means that you have a better executive. A better executive means you have better government.
Yeah.
And all of it is underpinned by Parliament. And to allow it to degenerate, to allow it to become a joke, I think demeans the people who sent us here. And it also distracts us from the mission, which is to get South Africa working and, most importantly, get South Africans back to work again.
Thandi Modise, you think she's going to do this?
Yeah, I think she's a great person. I've had some good interactions with her over the years. I think she's a completely different kettle of fish to the previous Speaker. And I think she understands Parliament's robust role in holding the executive accountable. And I sincerely hope that she's going to protect MPs as they do their job holding the executive accountable, rather than protect the executive, as we saw happening in both the 4th and 5th Parliament, which is why Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, I think, was so critical of Parliament's inability to hold the executive accountable. She must allow MPs to do their work within the bounds of the rules.
John, pleasure speaking to you. Good luck. Enjoy today, and good luck for the next sitting and the session. John Steenhuisen, of course, is from the DA, the Chief Whip of the DA. It is now 8 o'clock in a very chilly but beautiful Cape Town. I'll hand you back to Johannesburg.